to Crosstalk, the U.S. presidential election. I'm joined by my guest here in Moscow, Mark Sloboda. He's an international affairs and security analyst. We also have Dmitry Babich. He's a political analyst with Sputnik International. And in London, we cross to Adam Gari. He is a writer at theduran.com. All right, gentlemen, Crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I very much appreciate it. Let me go to Adam first in London. There's a lot to think about this campaign. We've never seen anything like it before. I hope we never see anything like it again. But I want to talk about the different kinds of takeaways you can think about this election. And in my mind, it was how the media behaved itself or misbehaved itself, focusing more on titillating stories, on scandals, and really on personalities. If you look at the airwaves, there's not a lot of substance. And I think this shows the poverty in many ways of this election. Go ahead, Adam, in London.
Well, you're absolutely right, Peter. The intellectual level of wealth is absolutely at poverty level in the American media and the Western media. Moreover, I think what I take from the campaign, though, in addition to that, is that for the first time in a long time, we've got two candidates who are diametrically opposed in terms of substance. The substance has been ignored by the media, but it's careful and necessary that we examine it now. Donald Trump is, for all intents and purposes, the most stridently anti-war candidate since 1972, when George McGovern stood against the Nixonian policies of war in Southeast Asia. If you want to go back for a conservative example, you could go to Robert Taft, who tried to become the Republican nominee the last time in 1952, so we're going back a ways, and he of course lost to the war party, Eisenhower, who identified the existence and dangers of the military-industrial complex a bit too little and a bit too late. Right. So I think the choice is quite clear. If you vote for Hillary Clinton, you're voting for the war candidate. If you're voting for Donald Trump, you're at least approaching the possibility of peace more than we've had in a long time.
You know, Mark, you know, the way that the media, depending on which side, I mean, it's basically all of media in the West, particularly in the United States, minus Fox, because Fox was a lot more nuanced. It focused a lot on the Wikileaks. It talked a lot more about the criminal investigations of Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. But it was for, you know, like CNN and the other networks, they basically stayed away from it or like to interpret it for you.
Yeah. Your earlier comments about the concentration on sex, scandal, and personality, that's nothing new. I mean, that's been par for the course for U.S. elections going along forward. Now, has this election become more of a carnival-esque reality show?
That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at.
Yes, and there certainly has been a lack of substance. But to be fair, for the most part, Donald Trump has been a candidate without a lot of substance. He hasn't run on substance. He's run on.
Yeah, but did Hillary Clinton run on her record, Dima? Because Hillary Clinton has an enormous amount of baggage there. Again, the mainstream wants to avoid it, and it wants to say, you know, Hillary's Hillary, but he's unfit. That was basically the narrative.
Well, I mean, let's listen to the interview with Julian Assange that was recently aired on RT, where he actually proves by facts that Hillary Clinton knew that Qatar and Saudi Arabia were financing the so-called Islamic State.
Because Assange used her own words.
Exactly.
This is not an interpretation.
Her own correspondence with John Podesta, you know, where John Podesta says it, as we say in Russian, black and white, that basically Qatar and Saudi Arabia finance the so-called Islamic State. It's not some rogue Saudi prince.
Who else did the Saudis and the Qataris fund?
Exactly.
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton. Okay, Adam, let me go back to you because I think this is,
$1 million yes.
But Dima Babich is absolutely right here. This is a bombshell. It's out there.
No, it should be a bombshell.
No, thanks, Mark. It should be because, you know, this is really key here. Follow the money. And we are following the money here. But at the same time, the Western mainstream hardly picks up on it. I would be willing to bet that most people in the United States do not know this critical fact. Go ahead.
And it's an incredibly dangerous fact. If you go up to most people in America and say, what are your views on ISIS, they would not surprisingly be uniformly negative. If you were to ask them, well, what are Hillary Clinton's ties to the kingpins, the sort of mafia godfathers of ISIS in the Gulf, the Qataris and the Saudis, they'd scratch their heads. The media have been derelict in their duty to expose the fact that a major US candidate is connected to the funding and arming and spreading of the most vile and barbaric kind of terrorism that the world has seen in recent memory, if ever. And the fact that the information is there, but the journalists in the Western mainstream media aren't doing their job, shows that Donald Trump is correct when he says the biggest supporters of Hillary Clinton aren't any people or aren't any NGO even, not even any business, although she's got plenty of that on her side. It's the media. It's the media industrial complex, which for Hillary Clinton is probably even more important than her ties with the military industrial complex, though she's got quite a bit of ties with both.
Okay, Mark, you know, we've been told by the campaign, the Clinton campaign, that there has been outside interference, meddling in the American election. And of course, it's usually pointed at Russia. But from the conversation we've already had here, we have Saudi Arabia, we have Qatar, and most importantly, Wikileaks. Wikileaks is functioning in the way that journalism used to. Journalism is just advocacy and it's hackery. And Wikileaks, for all its criticism, is actually functioning as a responsible media outlet.
Yeah, it's certainly doing the job of investigative journalism rather than stenography that most of the Western mainstream media has been reduced to through, you know, the way the corporate media works, cutbacks, and so on. That's understandable. But this piece of information, and then this is in Clinton's email citing U.S. intelligence, that the governments of Saudi Arabia and Qatar are clandestinely funding and providing logistical support to ISIS and other Sunni terrorist groups in the region. This is explosive. This should be the most important talking point of the election. It might be the biggest piece of information that WikiLeaks has ever provided. It goes further than just the election and Clinton having taken tens of millions of dollars from the Saudis and the Qataris. Clinton and Obama then went on, knowing this, to sell the Saudis over $100 billion worth of advanced
the
U.S.
largest military sales in history.
In history, signed by Clinton. And then they have Saudi Arabia and Qatar knowing this in their anti-ISIS coalition, which reveals the whole thing as a sham and simply a tool for a regime change in Syria.
Other things here is that the pay for play. I mean, I was reminiscing last night about the Watergate investigation. And of course, crimes were committed and wrongdoing committed. But, Donald Trump is actually right. This is much, much bigger than Watergate. And I have to wonder how many of Clinton's people will go to jail for her. Go ahead, Dean.
Well, the problem is that no one went to jail for basically providing false information on weapons of mass destruction in Iraq in 2003. Right. Did anyone get even demoted? Let alone
no, they're still on the airwaves, Dima. They're still there.
And what I hate about this election is that the real revelations, like the WikiLeaks revelation, this is not considered to be real journalism. They say that this is Russian propaganda. What is not Russian propaganda? Okay, a Newsweek article this week about Dmitry Peskov, a spokesman for the Kremlin, masterminding the hacking operation in the United States with Sergei Ivanov, the former head of Putin's administration, and with Dmitry Medvedev against it. Someone named Kurt Eichenwald publishes this idiocy. It's like saying that Mark Toner masterminded a hacking of Russian electoral system, and then someone like, Mr. Carter stopped him from doing it again.
The only one that article is missing is Boris and Natasha from the Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah, but what I love about this article is that the author, Kurt Eichenwald, is 100% sure that Russians hacked the U.S. electoral system. They also hacked the British system, so that the Brexit vote happened. But how was it paid? He says that these Russian agents were paid by money disguised as payments from the Russian pension system. End of quote. My dream dream is for Mr. Kurt Eichenwald be fired from the Newsweek. He would have been fired in the early 70s, in the times of Watergate, for publishing such nonsense, and that he would leave on payments from the Russian pension system that he considers to be enough to finance the hacking of DNC campaign.
Let me go to Adam before we go to the break here. You know, one of the interesting things is we found out, Adam, is that at least 5 foreign intelligence agencies had access, hacked, essentially, Clinton's illegal server here. And Russia gets a lot of play there. But, you know, if you're Secretary of State and you have an unprotected server, a lot of people, not just foreign governments, are going to want to tap into there. And it was free for anyone to walk in. Again, we used the issue of who is fit to be president. This person, Hillary Clinton, is unfit with secrets. Go ahead.
No, she's clearly unfit, and she ought to be disqualified, not only for her recklessness and her incompetence, but her bed partners of terrorism. But this whole thing reminds one of Joseph McCarthy, the famous blustery alcoholic U.S. senator who found communists everywhere. There was a communist in the cupboard, a communist in your shoes, a communist under the bed. And what I think Hillary Clinton should have investigated a bit more is how that chapter ended. It ended with both Republicans and Democrats condemning Joseph McCarthy in the Senate, and he died ignominiously, and his name became a byword for a kind of hysterical witch hunt.
I'm going to have to jump in here, gentlemen. We're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on the U.S. presidential election. Stay with our team. Okay, let's continue talking about major takeaways from this election here. We've talked about the media. Mark, what's on your mind?
Okay, my thesis for this election, the biggest takeaway, is that this, for the first time in many decades, we have seen American democracy come to life. It's like it was a corpse on the morgue table, and someone took some defibrillators to it, and it jumped, and it showed a little bit of life. And we see this because of the emergence of 2 outsider candidates to dominate both of their parties, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Now, this is a secret, maybe people don't know this, that democracy is structurally predetermined by laws, constitutions, and institutions to provide a choice within a certain range of possibilities, but not outside of that range of possibilities. Well, in this election, we saw Trump and Sanders emerge on either side, the farthest range of these possibilities. And Sanders was blocked coming way through.
He was cheated. He was cheated.
We know the Democratic National Committee was manipulated and rigged from the inside. So he was halted. He got much further than anyone, including myself, thought he would, as a socialist Jewish candidate from a small New England state. Donald Trump, on the other hand, succeeded where Bernie failed. He got through all of the institutional filters of American democracy. He got through the media, which was completely aligned against him, has been from the beginning. He got through the corporations that provide the campaign finance. Donald Trump has done very little fundraising and spending in this election, remarkably little, instead managing to play the media for most of it. And the third thing is he got through his own party, which is where Sanders failed. He managed to get through a party that was probably rigged more than the Democratic National Committee was against him, but he had such an overwhelming lead by the party's base. Now, this is not to say that Donald Trump is a liberal Democrat. He's not. Americans, Westerners, often conflate democracy with liberalism. Democracy is a methodology for determining the general will, right? Liberalism is an ideology. Trump is not a liberal. Trump is an odious person, personally. I don't like him, all right? If I had my druthers, if we had a real democratic system, I would have elected Jill Stein.
It's really interesting, Tim. You know, Mark brings up a really interesting point here, because I've often called this election the election of insurrection. And we've seen the institutions of power. I mean, really, quite remarkably, we have the government of the United States actively supporting Hillary Clinton's candidacy, which doesn't mean a president can't support the party's nominee. That's very normal in American history, okay? Even considered a tradition. It's not obligatory, though. But now we see the Attorney General, we see the Justice Department at war with each other, and it's only the beginning. No matter who wins this election, that's going to move forward here. It's the institutions that are putting a crimp on democracy, particularly in the United States. We could probably talk about Brexit with Adam. Go ahead.
Well, you're absolutely right. I read a few days ago in the Washington Post a menacing article about some hidden Trump voters who need to be taken into account. You know, it reminded me of 1937. Few people remember that the repression of 1937 in the Soviet Union was predetermined by the fact that we had the first secret ballot then. So Stalin and his people were so afraid that they would face opposition that they deliberately increased the repressions. In the same way, I'm afraid this election is going to be bad for whistleblowers in the United States because certain things started to be legitimized, things that had not been legitimized before. And I agree with Mark that I think this election is terrible for the Democratic Party because the Republicans at least had a maverick, you know, who managed to break through.
No, they had a maverick, but they never even backed him up. They never backed up their own nominee. And then you have the Democratic Party that they rigged the election against the most popular candidate, Bernie Sanders. That's not democracy.
Inside the Republican Party, you at least had a rebellion. In the Democratic Party,
but that rebellion may end up destroying the Republican Party.
It's going to be. I think both parties are going to be.
Bernie Sanders, having learned that he was actually, he never had a chance, that he had been thrown out of election. He did not rebel. He endorsed Clinton's candidacy. To me, this is a shame, you know.
No, it's not a shame. It's a sham. Okay?
Exactly.
Let me go to Adam here.
I think it's both.
Well, go ahead. Jump in. Go ahead.
I think when it comes to the Brexit analogy, which Trump has made quite well, and Hillary tried to latch on to the antithesis, and it fell quite flat, I think the analysis is incredibly important. In Britain, you had people that had never been a member of a political party, never even voted, and these were people of all ages, the young, the old, and everyone in between. They came out and they voted against the European Union, because even if they didn't know the specifics and the nitty-gritty, it looked and smelled a bit like globalism. It looked and smelled a bit like something that was unpatriotic and undemocratic. This same tendency is occurring in America right now, where the polls, I just don't trust them. You've got people who aren't on the radar of most of these professional pollsters who failed before, and they will fail again. I think they're going to fail big now. Now, the only question is, how much is the election rigged? I totally agree that the media is rigging it. In that sense, Trump is right. No foreign power, least of all Russia's rigging it. In that sense, Hillary Clinton, like Joseph McCarthy before her, is wrong. Okay. Now, Assange in his recent interview said... pardon me?
Go ahead. Oh, no, I was going to jump in here. Hang on here. Mark, one of the things that I find, we're talking about the election tomorrow, but the criminal investigations going on in and around Hillary Clinton, they're not going to end. They're not going to end anytime soon. And we were facing, with her election, we're looking at a potential constitutional crisis. And, you know, of course, if she gets inaugurated, then the investigations go in a different direction because you go into an impeachment mode, okay? Because the sitting president can't be arrested. But you know where I'm going with this here right now. This is a very scary prospect. And I think we would all agree whoever is inaugurated in January is going to be deeply unpopular with large parts of the population.
And your thesis holds for Trump as well, because there's multiple legal cases against him moving forward. Either candidate wins, they're going to be under assault legally, and they're going to be under assault by populist backlash from the other side. And I agree with Adam that this election has been an election of populist expression. We saw people turn away from the center-right and the center-left and go to the far-right exterminative or the far-left exterminative, Sanders and Trump. But more than the populist struggle, we've also now seen internal struggle within the institutions of the U.S. government.
That's right. That's right.
What we've seen is something that would, the way Russian politics is usually described, where we have competing security agencies backing different candidates, or at least the way that this is the way it is perceived. The Guardian this week wrote that the FBI is Trump land, and that all these recent allegations against Trump are an FBI political attack on Clinton. Clinton, and that actually the FBI is agents of Putin. Putin, the demigod, actually controls the FBI as well. Yeah. Meanwhile,
Putin's everywhere.
Yeah, Putin's everywhere. Clinton has also been supported quite openly from the very beginning by the CIA. We've seen multiple CIA directors and deputy directors come out and support her candidacy, cast aspersions at Trump's national security ability. And we've seen a former CIA agent run in a crucial swing state on a Republican ticket, a Mormon in Nevada, specifically to deny Trump this crucial swing state, Nevada, that could have decided the election. It still could.
Maybe I'm not an insider of American politics, but I was stunned when I heard from Hillary Clinton in her debate with Trump. You know, Russian involvement was confirmed by 17 security agencies. No.
You have
a great free country where you have 17 security agencies obviously competing with each other. But the mere absurdity of this situation, you know, why is Clinton and, for example, Mr. Eichenwald, why do they accuse Russia of backing Donald Trump? Because Putin did not endorse Clinton's candidacy openly. Putin never said anything about him supporting Trump. Okay, let's face it. So Mrs. Clinton expects someone whom she compared to Hitler, whom Obama compared to Saddam Hussein. She expects that person to support her candidacy. Isn't that absurd? You know, people like that getting to the top of American policy is a joke in itself.
You know, Adam, I've said on this program before that if Russia really wanted to get involved in the American election campaign, that Vladimir Putin could have just done a pay-for-play deal with the Clinton Foundation. Okay, I mean that would have been the easiest way to do it.
That's what the Saudis and the Qataris do. I mean, if these people are to be believed, and most people, even in America, don't believe them, it seems that Putin's too busy running everyone else's country to be running Russia. I mean, what isn't Putin able to do? Maybe he could have fixed John Podesta's phone, since apparently he's the world's best hacker with an unparalleled knowledge of IT. I mean, it is absurd, but they keep peddling the absurdity. Is there an end to it? Well, there will be tomorrow, thank goodness.
You know, Mark, what kind of country is the U.S. going to be in January? Because, you know, depending on how the election itself unfolds, we've had so many surprises in this campaign. I worry that there's going to be the issue of legitimacy, which is something that it's a specter that haunts American politics right now with the next president.
The country is certainly going to be more divided than ever. And very well, either candidate could face legal proceedings against them that continue on into their presidency. The foreign policy, either more than likely with Clinton, that will be completely antagonistic going forward with Russia, right? And she's threatened to escalate to a potential World War III situation in Syria on behalf of these same jihadists, Al-Qaeda, you know, that she has supported to overthrow the Syrian government. Or Trump, who is proposing a complete foreign policy realignment away from, you know, NATO hegemony, democracy promotion, and these other things. So again, foreign policy is the real substance of difference between these two candidates.
But the American public, as we've discussed here, isn't really voting on these issues that Mark mentioned.
Well, in the Russian press, the view of this election is very skeptical. In Nezavismaya Gazeta, for example, they wrote that besides the president, you have also the Congress, you have a lot of departments. They won't allow Trump to become a peacemaker, even if he decides to become one.
Okay, on that note there, depressing note here, we've run out of time, gentlemen. Many thanks to my guests here in Moscow and in London. And thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time. And remember, crosstalk rules.
I love you.